Well, hello, once again, it's me, Leonard Wells, broadcasting as usual from Haslingden, near Manchester, in the UK, on November the 23rd, 2009. Why you should not vote for the Conservatives at the next general election. It looks as though we shall be holding a general election here in the UK in the spring of 2010. It's going to be a very important election, and I hope you will all think carefully about how you are going to vote and who you are going to vote for. If you think about it, the UK was one of the very first countries in the world to come up with the idea of democracy. What is even more surprising is that we were once a nation of pirates. Yes, back in Elizabethan times, we were pirates. And we came up with this idea and spread it round the world. God works in mysterious ways. Well, we think we are democratic, but is this really the case? We are all entitled to vote once we reach the age of 18. But in most general elections, not more than half the eligible population even bothers. Then our voting system itself further muddies the waters. We use the first past the post system, which means the one with the most votes in each constituency wins, which for the most part means that the winner has more votes cast against him than for him. Not every time, but very often. How can somebody truly reflect the wishes of the people if more of the people wish for something other than what he stands for? Does that make sense to you? Doesn't to me. So our system is unfair then. Well, even if we all voted, we couldn't end up with the wishes of the entire eligible population reflected fairly in Parliament unless we all voted for the same person or the same party. And that will never happen. I would like to see compulsory voting. It is far too important a matter not to be left to the whims of less than half of us. If we have passed a law to say we have to stop when the traffic light turns red, surely in the name of all that is holy, we can require every citizen to express a preference at an election once every few years. Now, I'm not going to tell you who you should vote for in the forthcoming election. No, I am, however, going to urge you not to vote for the Conservative Party. You remember the Conservative Party? That was the party who were routed at the general election of 1997, after many of them had been found wallowing in sleaze and corruption. We later learned that the Prime Minister himself was having an affair with a fellow MP, so we were all well rid of them. Who can forget Mrs. Thatcher? As our first woman Prime Minister, she made her mark wherever she went, handbagging any man who stood in her way. It was under her rule that we took our eye off the Falklands. The Argentinians seized the opportunity and invaded. It cost many lives to get those distant rocks back, and billions of pounds were spent, and are continuing to be spent on maintaining a military presence in a cold, faraway part of the world. £75 million a year, I'm informed. Mrs. Thatcher was an embarrassment in Europe, and we now know that she opposed the reunification of Germany, even asking Gorbachev if he could prevent it. Where was she looking? Where was her vision? I have read that she used to like to repeat to herself Winston Churchill's wartime speeches. Well, that would explain her warlike and bombastic approach, wouldn't it? The Conservatives don't like railways. Since a lot of them can afford very expensive motor cars, one can understand why they prefer not to go by train, when you look at the trains. You remember Dr. Beeching and his famous axe, which ripped up a third of our railway system. A system built with hard work and the sweat of many working class men and women. We invented the railways and built railways in many parts of the world. But thanks to the Conservative Party, we are now far behind France and Spain and Germany. You may not be aware of this, but a steel wheel on a steel rail is 600% more efficient as a means of transport than a rubber tied wheel on a road. So preferring to rely on motor transport was doomed to cause problems for the entire planet. The motor car is now one of the biggest killers on Earth, and has certainly killed and seriously injured more people than all the wars of the 20th century. Just think about it. It pollutes the very air we breathe. And the Conservatives realised the game was up when they contemplated the general election of 1997. They again spitefully smashed up the British railway system and gave us this harebrained crackpot scheme of private train operators, with no experience, mind you, renting a franchise to run trains on a state-owned railway track. As many predicted, the fares have gone through the roof. We now have a walk-up, first-class fare from Newquay in Cornwall to the Kyle of Lochalsh in Scotland of over £1,000. And get this, it takes nearly 24 hours, involves 6 changes of train, and several of those trains don't even have first-class seats on them. What kind of people do the Conservatives think we are? Look at what has happened to the prices of gas and electricity under their privatisation. Those greedy scallywags put the prices up by 50% last year and promised to reduce them as soon as they could. Pigs will fly. Finally, let us have a look at who would be in the Conservative government if it won. Many of them are millionaires. I have no personal objection to millionaires. But do you think being rich on that scale is likely to help them appreciate what it is like to be an ordinary working man in the street or a pensioner? Do any of them stay in bed every day to avoid having to put the heat on because they can't afford it? I doubt it. Mr. Hague, their Foreign Affairs spokesperson, charges £10,000 to go and talk for an hour on one of his lecture tours. That is almost as much as a postman gets for humping a heavy sack of mail round the streets in all weathers for a whole year. Don't be surprised then if the first thing they do is take back the bus pass from the elderly. I wouldn't put it past them. So please don't rush into voting for them simply because you think they are better than the present Labour government. Well, cheerio for now, and God bless you all. You may have gathered that I am not one of those who makes the infantile mistake of thinking that everything is an accident, and that at death their story comes to a dark and empty close. If they really believe that an accident created them, they should worship a God called accident. But you can see, can't you, where we are being led by those who have turned their backs on the good books. Cheerio for now. Take care.